Welcome to the How to Start a Cannabis Farm podcast. My name is Jared, and I will be your host again. Um, so today's topic is breeding, and I am here with Golden Hill Grower. Definitely 2018's most underrated breeder. Head grower, head breeder, head everything at Mellow Moose Farms. This guy's probably taught half of Oregon and the U.S. how to grow, thanks to his Instagram account and his work with Solo Farms and Brown Guy 420 and on YouTube, and the Daily Grind. So with that, man, tell me a little bit about yourself. How are you?
Hello. I'm good. Real good right now.
Good, man. Good. So, tell me, man, becoming a breeder it's one of those, I guess, endpoints. It's something that people try to become, and one of the steps to doing that is growing, or learning how to grow prior to becoming a good breeder. How did you start growing, and, what are some of the mistakes that you kind of have had to, I guess, deal with, through this journey that led up to you beginning to breed or want to breed? Yeah, go ahead, man.
Okay, yeah, what got me
we can start your own.
Yeah, where I started was just like really it was just a big part of my life was changing. I was getting a little older in my 20s and just trying to figure out life in general, so I always loved being out in the wilderness and everything, so gardening is kind of hand in hand to me. It's nature. So that's where I just decided just to grow a veggie garden and see if I even enjoyed being out there doing those type of gardening activities.
So you started growing vegetables prior to cannabis?
Oh yeah. Yep.
That's weird. I'll go on a record, and I've said it before. I don't like growing vegetables unless I can grow cannabis. But for me, it's because I came from a place where cannabis was, outlawed, and you were persecuted for having a joint. So I could care less about vegetables. But that's awesome, man. So what got you to make that transition from vegetable garden to cannabis garden?
It was pretty easy. Since I was going through the changes, I needed some type of mental help with just figuring everything out, and cannabis to me was the safest thing out there because I had been on prescription bullshit my whole life.
Oh yeah.
And it didn't help me at all, so in a way it was kind of like myself was helping myself by learning to garden to treat myself from this illness that I had created.
So essentially common medicine in the common world was failing you. And so
yeah,
you went into survival mode in a sense and had to learn how to farm cannabis. That sounds like quite a few people, unfortunately.
Yeah, I feel like cannabis found me and I found it. Like I felt like I tried to veer from it and try to be like a straight person, like a 9-to-5 grinder, and like cannabis always like overruled all of that. Like it told me this isn't who you are. Like, and I just didn't fight it. I just let nature take its course.
Interesting. So if you don't mind me asking, so you, and this is, some very personal things. I mean, this isn't just like, oh man, I wanted to just,
No, yeah, most people start growing weed, or let's get some OMP cards and
just
knock some shit out and make 50 grand this year. It's like me, that was I did not start there. This was not who I am. That's I cannot sell anything. That's not who I am. I have to rely on pure 100% quality product because that's so
holy shit, man.
But so I didn't even start there. I had to start there to help myself get through life and figure out and not want to go down the road that I knew that the pharmaceuticals were taking me.
So really you had to learn how to help yourself first before you could even begin helping others, just because your life was in such a detriment because of these pharmaceuticals and all the shit, and side effects going along with that.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. And like I've told you before, like along the way too, as soon as I did start growing cannabis, I was constantly helping growing other people's weed at their own OMMP card places for free. And would come in, would set up no-till, and
Why?
It helped me it helped me have experience, because one thing I know, if you want to get good at anything, once a year is not good enough.
Damn. Say that again, please.
So, like, if you're only doing one garden a year, like, you're so far behind compared to doing, like, me 5.
So that's the reason for light dipping.
And indoor and all of it, the more you can do, the more you can cycle through your plants, period, the more you understand plants, period. So if you're only doing one grow compared to someone that's doing, say, they're doing 5 flower cycles throughout the year, their knowledge is 5 times greater than yours because they have experience.
Practice makes perfect. Holy shit. Man, people, people will do that for themselves, but very rarely will people go out and almost put themselves in a position to apprentice themselves, and grow for free, and do it in a way that also helps people. They'll do it for free if it's for somebody that's famous or well known, or if they know for a fact that there's something that they can gain within a certain time frame. But for man, there's just so much more to growing cannabis for you, and your relationship with cannabis cultivation that goes beyond the average farmer. And I mean, to top it all off, I mean, you're local as fuck.
Yep.
Like
born, raised here.
Like local as fuck, man. Like that's so, man. I have to ask, there's been some shitty, things that have happened, with other farms and just disagreements. How has that taken a toll on you? Because, you've worked with, like 4 something rec farms, 3, 4, something like that,
somewhere in there,
or helped build,
yeah,
help get those going, or had some part in that. I mean, how does it affect you emotionally as a cultivator and somebody that wants to do this for the rest of their life and has had all of this? I mean, I guess I wouldn't call them failures, but how would you call, or how would all of these little setbacks, I mean, how does it affect you?
I don't look at them as failures or setbacks whatsoever.
Good.
Like the activities I grew up doing, like you can't look at failures as like you failed. Oh, you'll never do it right. Like like you just have, like, they're only learning lessons. That's it.
Man.
And I learned what not to do 3 or 4 times through all these different farms, and what to do. I'm not saying they're bad whatsoever. I've just learned through a lot of other people's experiences very easily. So just being there, just helping out, doing small different tasks, I learned as a whole like community, being there with people, learning how to work with people. That's probably been one of the biggest things I've had to learn getting into this business in general, is just learning how to communicate, how to just express yourself the right way and not let your ego overbound who you really are. And like
that's tough.
Those have been hard. That's the hardest part. Growing's easy.
Man, so this is definitely, you've definitely come a long ways then. I mean, this has been more than just, getting stoned and medicine. This has been an educating tool. This has been a school. This has been a mentor. This has been, potentially a career path.
Yeah, it's crazy, and this is real as fuck, but the way I looked at it getting into it was like, it was either life, like I was either gonna die or do this.
Oh, from the fucking pills.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Holy shit, man.
It was like, that's probably why I am where I am, because I'm not half-assing it, because it's my fucking life.
Shout out to GH Genetics, Golden Hill Grower Genetics. I don't know if you need another reason to purchase them, but you know, you're never gonna find a guy that's this fucking passionate and is this about his business, like ever. There's a lot of people out in the cannabis world that are passionate, but you know, very few people have had to actually put their life on the line for this plant. It doesn't run as deep as it does for Golden Hill Grower. He is quite possibly the most humble person that I have ever met, and you know, luckily I'm able to be a part of his life and to learn from him, but also to be able to do this podcast and to help kind of bring all this into light, because he needs a lot more support than he's been given. With all of that passion, man, and all of the emotion that essentially, you know, that you have, but also with all of the passion, and you know, not to negate anybody else's passion and the work that they've done as a breeder.
Oh, yeah.
Because I guess to transition, I mean, with all of that comes skill. I mean, you've obviously done multiple runs. You've gained a bunch of skill. You're talented as well. Other breeders have been growing forever. They have skill as breeders, and some of them might have natural talent for just picking out plants.
Yeah.
Some of the things that, you know, and we talked about previously and a little bit earlier, was that some growers are using the skill of the breeder and taking credit for that product. So just to give you like an example, back in Texas, man, we had a cut of hash plant that in my circle, it was known, and dude, I've yet to see better hash plant, still till this day, even coming all the way out here. It was just fucking miraculous. It was from a cut that came, like, these guys went out to the Greenbelt out in Austin and like found a fucking cave and like went all the way in the cave, dude, and they brought their fucking generators and their lights, and they drilled in there, and they basically grew in a cave year round. It was like 60 something degrees down there at all times, and that's where this cut of hash plant came from. We were young kids. There was no reason for us to have anything that good at all. It was just, dude was doing business with another dude, and you know, just came down the fucking pipeline to us. You know, up until this day, you know, I always thought that, yeah, man, you know, I was fucking killing it back then. I was killing it. But as you got older, as I got older, and now I'm starting to realize, like, the skill of that breeder, whoever created that cut, or who refined that cut, his skills shine through our lack of growing skill at the time. Even with all the different lockout issues and this and that was caused, you know, from a buddy of mine. I can't take credit for that shit because I told him not to do it, but the flower came out phenomenal. I mean, it's been fire, and that kind of brings up to this new point where, you know, a lot of growers are, you know, okay, so to back it up, breeding has become the new growing. Back in the day, everybody used to want to grow. Now everybody can grow, and so now everybody wants to breed. And that's what I mean, breeding has become the new growing. But a lot of these growers now are almost taking credit for fire-ass genetics that have just been fucking proven. You got anything to say about that, man? I mean, like, obviously you see it all the time on Instagram.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's definitely out there. It can cause confusion. But not to take away from your first time growers or anything like that, but like good genetics definitely will help you have a good harvest overall, no matter what, like, period. Like, I started off growing bag seed, like, and that's all I had. I didn't even have clones or cuts to anything or nothing. So, like, I first-handedly got to see what bad genetics are all about. And when you're trying to grow, like, medicine for yourself and rely on it, like, you take note to these things, like, very close note, and it's like, oh shit, like, like, I'm wasting so much time. I just wasted 3 months and this thing, like, didn't even grow, but this one over here grew, like, man, it took up half the tent, like. So it was like I started putting all A, B, and C together and realized that genetics were huge. And then
keep going, sorry.
Like, but then, like, as a grower, as I grew myself and got more experience, I ended up buying different seeds from different companies. I'm not going to name them, but they were, very well known, very well known strains, and I didn't have a lot of money, if hardly any at all, and I was still end up buying $500 to $1,000 overall in their genetics. And don't get me wrong, I found some decent stuff out of it, but when you find one decent thing out of $1,000 and that $1,000 didn't come to you easy whatsoever, like, you take note to all these different things.
Wow. So I mean, like JD Short, second generation, made a post a while back talking about I guess the two types of stability within genetics. And I guess there needs to be another term, but stability in one phrase meaning whether to herm or not to herm.
Yeah.
Stability the other one meaning if a pack comes in 11 or if it comes in 6, that you should be able to get the breeder's desired genotype with the right phenotypic expressions within that pack. And so if you can't get it within that pack, then it's not necessarily stable. And so you haven't refined it enough, and therefore you don't really have the skill as a breeder. Do you think that because breeders, for some reason it seems, their skill is almost underlooked, but they get shit on for charging hundreds of dollars for packs? Where is that, like, medium? I mean, obviously it should be accessible, but I mean, man, I've bought a couple $100 packs, and I don't have a single plant of them today. Or eventually, 10 out of 11 died. And I only got one fucking run. Is it the skill of the breeder? Is it laziness? I mean, do all these things have to be factored in? I mean, something that we talked about previously was how the health of a plant that you're making seeds with needs to almost be more than that of a plant that you're creating flower with, because that health can be passed down genetically.
Oh yeah, big time.
So I mean, is that something that people should be factoring in, or breeders need to be aware of, as far as the cost of their seed? I mean, like, that obviously affects germination rates and whatnot.
Oh yeah, big time. The cost thing is definitely a tricky thing, because how do you put a cost on your life, your experience? Like,
dude, yeah,
like, it's, yeah, how do you put a cost on it? But at the same time, people need to, eat and make a living and do stuff, and if that's their passion, like, who are you to blame them to do this? So it's, but at the same time, I know from experience, from being a grower that has very, very little money, if I had opportunity to buy genetics that were cheaper, that's what I got, because I couldn't afford anything else. So, like, at the same time, you have to think, even if you're putting out these $200 to $500 packs, you gotta think that, if you scale your price down, you're gonna have so many more people buy your product. I mean, twice full, because there's like there's a lot of broke people out there that love weed and they can't get good access to it, and that's like, that was me growing up. I mean, shit, we had, like, even though we live in Oregon, I'm supposed to have all this great weed and all this bullshit. No. Like,
dude, Oregon gets shit on nationally. It's sad.
It's bad. Like,
I'm surprised.
If you smoked weed growing up, you know, earlier, you know, when OMPP days and stuff, you were smoking bug bombs. You were smoking, like,
oh my god.
Stores used to sell out of bug bombs because people would put bug bombs off when they were flowering.
Fucking gross.
And like, well, it's just they didn't care. It was just their 9 to 5.
What's even worse, man, is like, I know for a fact, because me being in Texas, I got the most bug bombed weed that still went bad. I got last year's bug bombs, man.
Yeah.
Fuck, dude, that's horrible. All right, so to get back on subject, man, with all your experience and all your passion, how are your seeds going to be priced?
Definitely on the lower end, just because I don't think price, like a high price, doesn't always mean it's better. I would rather price it lower and have more people buy them and experience them and actually see that they're worth that money. Because like I've only bought probably 1 or 2 packs of seeds that I've actually paid for that I'm like, yeah, that was actually worth that money out of quite a few.
See, that's an interesting point, man, because money means different things to different people depending on how much they have. You know, like you were saying, if you only have $300 in your pocket and the pack costs $200, I mean, that's a lot of money.
You gotta eat.
Yeah, exactly. And that's so okay. Well, that's good to know, man. It seems like you're a breeder of the people, then, for the people.
Definitely. It's definitely not for money or like, because that's just not. I hate money. The idea of it, like. Yeah, it's just not me.
Yeah, man, it definitely does a lot, unfortunately. It's the root of all evil, as they say. So, why do you think breeding is so difficult? Because there's a lot of people out there, they use the term pollen chucking, or just people making F1 crosses, or really just people learning. But a lot of people don't have access to number counts or the actual space, and so I know that's one of the reasons why breeding is so difficult. You don't have access to the space. So for instance, on money, why is that difficult? I guess it seems like a lot of people are growing huge plants to breed. When you and I look at things, or when you and I spoke previously, you were telling me to look at it from almost a smaller perspective and to grow them smaller so that you can almost flip them faster and see them become what they're supposed to become in a shorter amount of time.
Because like time is money, and so like if you're taking 6 months to grow a plant and I did it in 3, like you paid a lot in electric compared to me. And then your time is money, so the value of your time putting into those plants over 6 months compared to 3 months, that's huge. That's twice-fold.
Now, what about the nutrient regimen? How does that play a role in breeding? Because, I mean, obviously when people, and I don't even know if people think about that, but when people are growing for flower, they're growing, for a certain purpose. Yeah. And it almost makes you wonder, are they using the same nutrients and the same kind of growing philosophy that they are when they're growing for seed? For instance, are they spending as much time on feeding compost teas and this and that, when in reality they could just cut back, let the plant do what it can, or show what it can do under a baseline regimen, and go through more plants that way? Do you think that has a role in some growers success, as in they're spending more money on their nutrients than spending money on the quantity of plants that they could go through.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, because if you're spending all that money on different nutrients and stuff, it's almost like that money you're spending is taking you time, in a way, to me.
Well, yeah, because you got to earn it again.
Yeah.
Now, what about... So, all right. Unfortunately, a lot of the industry is taking place on Instagram. And it seems like breeders are getting off track. And they're... So, the problem with Instagram and marketing on Instagram, at least from my perspective, is you can let your ego get involved. And instead of showing, your skill, you begin trying to brand yourself, which can be good and bad, but
yeah, there's ways to go about it.
There are, but so even within the cannabis industry on Instagram, there's almost like two little worlds. There's the California indoor world, and then there's the organic everywhere else world, and it almost seems like the only people that get recognition are the California indoor crowd. The people that grow really pretty name brand hype strains, that have access to, I guess, the Bay Area and that whole distribution network. I mean, do you think that young breeders are seeing that and almost like hypnotized by it over, seeing a solid strain? And I mean, I hate saying it, but seeing a solid, stable strain, that's not sexy. It's not something that's gonna get you laid. Saying like I got a fucking F7 of something, like nobody's fucking pussy's getting wet.
Yeah.
Like it's just not happening.
Yeah, to me the difference in that is just like having some rich millionaire that has to take all these prescriptions and he still hates his life, like compared to a guy who has nothing and is perfectly fine and happy and loves life. And like, to me, those are the difference in weed, is because it's like one's money greed driven and then the other one's like conscious of the world and who you are and what you're putting in your body and putting in back into the earth and not using as much material and everything. So people definitely get blinded by the fast now here, like bling,
right,
big,
right.
Like it happens to everybody. We're all in it. Like it happens to every single one of us.
Do you think it's like a transition of like consciousness? Like you move from one thing to another when your consciousness kind of forces you to realize that maybe this isn't aligned with what you should be doing?
Definitely. To me, I look at it as like when you're a kid, you're learning. You have to learn these steps. Like, don't put your hand on the stove, but you sometimes do it again for some reason. You forget. And as adults, people forget that we still do these exact habits as we did when we were childs. Like, it's ingrained in us to experiment and to try different things, and the things that flash, like, ooh, wow, that's okay, yeah, let's try this. Like, we are made to try things. We are very curious critters, like, and that's how we evolve as everything.
Yeah, definitely. Now, what about, so we were talking about space for breeding a little bit. Is there a way that people can better use the space that they have? I know people are looking into vertical farming, but yeah.
It just depends. There's so many different situations, but...
So what are your thoughts on Tent City?
Tent City?
Yeah, just
a bunch of grow tents?
A bunch of grow tents.
I love it. Like,
yeah?
I love it because it's easy. They're easy to... for me, they're easy to clean and, like, move around and have different situations. They're portable. Like, if you gotta... pack your stuff up and move, you can pack it down. You don't have to unscrew a bunch of boards and do damage to your house. And
Man,
but the tents are nice. Like you can fill them full and
yeah,
get decent little yield. I mean, it just all depends on your situation, what you're looking for, whether you want to be a grower or a breeder.
All right. Now, what about oh, it's an interesting thing whether you want to be a grower or a breeder. So, are you okay with like having your living room entirely filled with tents if necessary?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Because if you're gonna be a breeder, like to me, if you're really gonna get into breeding, like it's your life. You don't have you it consumes you. Like you become part of the plant and everything, and you'll be whatever your plant loan is. You'll be maxed out constantly. Like, you'll figure out the tricks of the trade that like keep yourself legal and keep the rounds going and keep breeding round after round and after round. And just getting that experience under your belt.
So you say that, I mean, you're basically, eat, live, shit, piss, breeding. Yeah. So what's a day in the life of a breeder? Like you wake up balls early.
Yeah.
And then what?
You get up if you can. But it's, I wake up and I mean, most growers won't even like think this way at all. But when you get up, you gotta think like, you have to deal with your pollen last. So if you have any pollen anywhere, you have to make sure that you deal with him last and not first, so you're not spreading pollen. So that's a
preventative.
Just learning how to like prevent yourself from pollinating everything takes time. Like I definitely did it when I first started. I was like, oh no, it won't it won't get there. There's no way. It happened. And so but it's not as bad as you think. I seeded stuff, but I only got a little seeds because I lightly seeded it on accident. So if you have an accident, it's not like your entire bud, your whole plant will turn into seeds. It's only a few seeds where that pollen attached to the hairs. So don't freak out if you did, because you'll still have a lot left.
So you wake up, deal with plants.
Oh yeah.
Lunch.
Yeah, I wake up, deal with plants in that certain order, so I'm not contaminating anything.
Right.
And it's like I wake up, eat, deal with plants, come home at lunch, eat, and then from the afternoon on, I get a little break, a couple hours in there. Just to hang with friends, smoke some weed, test different things, trim.
Office work.
Yeah.
Safety meetings.
Stuff you can do inside.
Right on. Okay. But you're still working.
Yeah, still working.
It's all like the analytical side.
Yeah, and then from there, it's you're eating dinner again, and then right back out there, making sure that everything's good to go. Like it doesn't need transplant. Or it doesn't need to be cut back, doesn't need help with anything.
So you run a night shift?
Oh yeah, and then after I eat from 6 o'clock pretty much on, it's all I transition from my outdoor stuff to some indoor stuff, and so then you got to make that conscious deal too. I'm going from outside to inside, so bugs and shit.
Oh.
So you gotta make sure you're not wearing the same shoes, staying clean, like making sure everything's clean. And and then I start that and go through that whole process of whatever they need, and then by the time I'm done, it's 9, 10, sometimes it's 11, 12.
Damn, dude. So
then you wake back up at.
So you're farming.
Yep, that's every day. I don't take breaks. I have taken one vacation in the last I think 9 years.
Dude, we're gonna get you a vacation, bro. You deserve that.
I've had hours and half days.
That is not a fucking vacation. That is a break.
But totally committed.
You had days off. Those are weekends.
Yeah, I don't even know what a weekend is because that doesn't exist.
Holy shit, dude. So you've been doing this for years. And I mean, that kind of fades right into the next topic, man. You've been doing this for so long. A lot of people, they make memes and jokes and shit about, you know, how everybody's all happy and chipper and all fucking horny as a goat on, you know, March, April when it's planting season, and then it's fucking August, September on the hill, and everybody's exhausted, tired. Fucking, it starts getting dark earlier, and it's darker later, and people want to sleep in, and they want to go to sleep early. And how the fuck do you have energy for this shit, man? Like, how the fuck do you do it?
One is the will to live. Like, I got an extreme will to live. I don't want to, like, I want to experience this life. So that alone keeps me going. But
dude, hold on. I gotta pause on that, man. Like that, it's just crazy to me that you look at this with such like a pioneer perspective. Like, this is about you fucking living, not just about you like making money or growing fucking weed.
It's survival.
God damn.
It's not what other people portray it as. For me,
it's a will to live.
Yeah, and that's why, like, I'm like, I haven't. To me, I'm not famous at all or anything like that. To me, it's like but I know, like, I will make it where I'm going, because very few people out there are putting this much into it. Like, because most people have kids, a 9 to 5, all this stuff. I'm not taking anything away from people who have that. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm doing 10 times more work than you, which it doesn't always mean you're better, but I've put all this into it, compared to where most people have to deal with all these other things, to where every second of my day, every moment, I'm constantly grinding, constantly thinking, constantly evolving my products, the way I think.
Wow.
Everything. And how do I keep up with all this?
Yeah, I mean,
is I physically train for this. Like, I wake up. I forgot to mention this part. Like, I wake up, and after I eat, I'm going out running. I'm running. I'm hitting the trail, hitting the rail. I'm running at least a mile.
Physically running.
Physically running, you know, outside, getting out there in the cold, breathing, stretching my body, moving it. Because if you're just a grower and you're sitting around smoking weed all day and you think you're gonna keep up to all this, no, I'm sorry. I grew up doing extreme sports to high physical fitness, and I've had troubles with it when I first started. So I was like, holy shit.
Farming ain't no joke.
Like, I raised dirt bikes for a living, you know, when I was younger, and like you're tapped out, you know, 180 heartbeats per minute for hours on end.
Holy shit, man.
And I'm still getting tired from farming. It's like, holy shit, like, I have to take this endurance to a whole new level. So that's why I started running every day, and make sure like I run hills just to get that heartbeat super duper high. And that has been a game changer for me, because when it's 6 o'clock and you've worked every day and nonstop for years on end, like, you're fucking tired. Like, I've been almost hallucinating. I've been so tired.
Will to live.
So yeah, so like, I just keep going, and that running helps your endurance to keep going, because it, you know, you get more oxygen, you know, you can evolve.
So you actually train for this shit then?
Train for every day. Every day my body lets me, I do it.
And that definitely, I mean, you know, I know, you know, a strong body equals a strong mind, you know, because it takes dedication, it takes a lot of hard work, it takes focus, it takes consistency. You have to do that, man. How does that affect your mental strength? Because a lot of people, they get fatigued just mentally. I mean, you know, they might have the energy, but they're just exhausted from, you know, thinking about it, from stressing about it, from having hopes and being let down from their hopes. I mean, you know, as a breeder, a lot of these projects, if they're done correctly, you know, to fucking 1 million, that shit takes time. That takes years. How do you deal with that, just in general?
you just have to understand that that's your life. Like you have like I've told you before. I'm like, hey, if you really like want to be a real breeder that's gonna like really create some really good shit, like you have to learn to give your life up. Like it's like like going out drinking with your friends, doing anything like that. Any like I've lost like all comforts in my life. Anything that you think, girlfriends, anything that you think's good, I pretty much eliminated.
You can't be a 9-to-5 breeder.
You can. There's like, I mean, you can do it, but like you're gonna be. It's just gonna take you way longer to achieve it.
I guess it's just a little different if somebody's gonna be a 5 a.m. to 5 a.m. breeder. I guess that makes a little difference. Somebody eats, sleeps,
Yeah.
Shit's breeding. So what I mean, how do you keep up the search though? I mean, because every time you pop a bunch of seeds, you're hoping for something, you put all this money into it, and it comes out nothing. Or as many people they go halfway through a project and realize, oh fuck, this is not the direction I need to go in, or something else pops up and it's just they gotta backtrack. I mean,
how do you just keep moving
forward? Like if you don't find keepers, because that's what we were talking about. Unfortunately, like sometimes you might just find a bunch of seeds, or you might just have a bunch of shit that you have to run through, and if you don't have access to space where you can run 1,000 seeds at once, and let's just say you have to run 10 or 100 runs of 10, like how do you get by? How do you deal with that much, not failure, but just not success? I mean, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, I don't really. That's a good question. It could be stubbornness, but
so you just don't want to give up.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's not in my nature.
Has it ever come across your mind that like, oh, maybe I'm not gonna find this? Is that ever?
I mean, classic example, like the Gorilla Glue bubblegum that I made. Like I popped seeds for 4 years, and I didn't find one keeper, and I didn't find anything I was looking for. Like I thought it was gonna turn out like something totally different. And I was like, shit, man, this is not what I expected at all. And I was like, man, I was starting to get really down on it. I put it on the back burner, and I was just like, I'm going to just kind of search for something else for a little bit. And then...
So you just put that on pause, or do you just scrap it?
I just put it on pause for a little bit and just...
Something new?
Yeah, just try something new.
Okay. So almost like how... writers get writer's block, they just need something different. You just kind of pause game, go do something else.
Yeah.
When you get a little bit of energy, come back and okay.
Yeah, even though breeding's the same activity, but just breeding something else and going through those
right
stimulated me to go, oh yeah, you can find cool shit and everything. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, I have to go back to these bubble glues and just go through them again, and I committed to it. I think that was the biggest part that made me find that keeper. Was like I finally was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna commit all this. I'm gonna go all in on it, and I popped my limit and went in there and I grew them out, and I put everything into it, like into the growing, made sure they were perfectly healthy, sprayed no bugs, didn't spray in flower, of course, but just make sure perfect plants, and sure enough,
that run,
bam, one comes popping up there and just has every mark that I'm looking for in a plant. And then it continued to surprise me even after I grew it, and then cut it, dried it, cured it, smoked it. Like it just kept on impressing me, and
damn, but there's a lot of work you have to keep up with. I mean, especially if you're running plant after plant after plant. I mean, obviously you end up learning this plant up and down. Is that difficult at all? I mean, trying to keep track of everything, or I mean, do you write it down? Do you keep it in your mind? Is it just something you pay attention to?
I do write some things down, but most of it it's just in my mind.
Okay.
I'm a person that it's like I know, like I trust the path that I am on. So
Mhm.
like, and I'm not like a half-asser. Like I'm not like, obviously I'm not just
Right.
nilly-willy just doing shit. So it's like, obviously I can trust my path because I'm putting more than enough time into it, and
Hmm.
so I just let myself guide myself, and then I'll remember I don't have to remember all these little details for some reason now compared to when I first started growing, and
Right.
I'd write everything down, and like
Mm-hmm.
it's like my brain evolved just to store that information.
Very cool. So it's almost out of necessity. You just kind of
Yeah,
worked with it.
everything is out of necessity for me. It was, like I said before, like it was live or die for me for this. It was, and that's the way I constantly look at it, and
You are definitely going to go places, man. Definitely. So
it's,
one of the I'm part of a Facebook group called the Probiotic Farmers Alliance Grokashi Alpha Tester Group, PFA. And one of the things that's a conversation that keeps coming up are PFA approved seeds. And essentially they're seeds that have been created using probiotics or just all organic methods with a focus on natural farming and not chemicals, not synthetics.
yeah.
And you're essentially allowed to sell seeds there, but if you want to sell seeds, they have to be up to blah blah blah. And one of the conversations we've had in the past is about how all strains have been created under HPS as of recent, just because of the past and the criminal aspect of growing cannabis, and how the DNA can be affected all the way down, and so how some plants don't do as well, or they do completely different outdoors, indoors. How do you think strains are being affected when they're bred under the coma style synthetic, I guess method versus an all natural, no till self sufficient style where instead of just giving plants nutrients straight to their veins and bypassing all the microbes and whatnot that are there naturally, you're using the ecosystem to essentially allow the plant to feed itself. How does that affect vigor, DNA? How does that? I mean, I guess a better way of saying it also is, why is your growing methods and these growing methods, why will they produce better seeds than somebody that breeds using synthetics?
Just to me, it's like the plant has. Oh, okay, yeah. So, like, I got a question on Instagram about what is the coma style that people think is a style of growing.
Yeah.
No, like what we mean is like that. To me, a synthetic plant is when it's being grown is like being grown like if someone's in a coma in the hospital. Not a style, like they're in a coma. So like when people are in a comas in the hospital, they're being pumped the nutrients. They can't eat when you're in a coma. Like you can't process nutrients that way. So they are literally just there keeping you alive. And to me, synthetic nutrients, that's all the plant. That's all what you're doing to that plant. It's there. It's expressing itself. It's growing. It's there. It's alive. But like compared to like the way I do it, like the plant actually sends roots out and searches and finds all this different food and fungi and like all of its actual natural things that are not human made through a chemical process.
So it's almost like you're like you can't ride a dirt bike on an IV.
No, you can't do anything on IVs besides being in a coma.
Yeah, you just sit there and you're alive and you're not
Pretty
necessarily
much
thriving.
Then you die one day.
So essentially, the life of that plant compared to the life of a plant that's actually growing in the wild and being a plant, opposed to being a test subject or a little alien or something that's being experimented on or just test tube plant.
Yeah, a big difference that I can say too is like the character. Like if you meet somebody who's like, well, maybe even myself, for instance, person who's been like had rough times or been through a lot of different like even people who've been in war, like it builds you different character.
Oh, yeah.
Like it shapes you a character, and like that character is like, you know, all natural plants. They build this character because they've had to learn to survive. When your synthetic plant is being they're surviving because of you, not because of them.
So do you think that that means, or do you think that that's one of the reasons why a lot of common genetics are having bad germination rates or just shitty plants, is because they're being grown with synthetics?
Yeah, I mean, imagine if you took, you know, a male and a female in the hospital that are in a coma and you bred them while they're in a coma. Do you think that baby was going to come out right at all?
No, that's an interesting question.
That is not going to happen. Like, it can work. You can make it, like, science can make it work, but, like, it's not the way nature intended. Like you can't, nature has one rule, and it does not veer from that rule. And if you veer from it, then you're going to get these different tendencies for different things. Period.
Wow. So, see, and that's one thing. I'm a firm believer of being able to change your DNA for your kids and whatnot by focusing on certain things at the present and living a certain way. You know, so if you want, you know, to, I don't know, be a, you know, if everybody in your family is a little bit overweight and you want to make sure everybody else from you on is not, if you decide to keep working out and keep that rolling and whatnot, over time that will eventually change your DNA. And so if that's the same in the cannabis world, are you saying that the genetics that are grown under harsher conditions and are essentially put through multiple ringers, whether it's through stress testing, but also making sure that they can hold their ground in an organic environment, do you think that those hold their own weight better in the genetic world than the synthetic ones? I mean, those will thrive in more places, I should say.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, and the one reason I like doing it this way, because like if you're just chemically feeding, like every plant is going to grow. Like even the runt will grow a lot more than what it should. But if you're in just an organic situation, that runt is going to fully express itself in that
because it has to do its own thing.
Because in its DNA, it's a runt, so it's going to express itself to the fullest. So it's, that's obviously a runt, and so it really lets you cull out all the runts really fast.
It's interesting, man, because like I've had some seeds that were, from Southern California and grow them up here, and they get shit on. And a lot of people say, "Oh, it's because they're from fucking California. They're from their California. None of that shit works up here in Oregon. None of it." Well, I got a fucking Malawi clone. Fucking that's just sitting out in the middle of the sun, hasn't been watered in months, and still managed to grow in just shit soil, still alive, still doing well. It's just interesting to me that, some of these land races and the genetics, I guess, that they come from, created by nature under nature's conditions, and these things can come from Africa over fucking decades to be put up here in Oregon into a test soil pit and run, and it still survives. Whereas you take, something from California and put it outside and let it, try to do its thing, and depending on the strain, it just eats shit and dies. Or it just doesn't produce as well, and it's just not as hardy. And so I guess a lot of that kind of brings up, that all these strains were created under HPS, and so they produce different things and whatnot.
Yeah, and a lot of the strains are also created just because for speed and time, to make money, to do all these things quick. So, like, do you think they're going to last the time? If they're made quickly? No. Like, it doesn't work that way. Like, I mean, there's a lot of, like, those are the type of strains that I am working towards. They're the ones that are going to last. I'm going to grow them for the next 20 years and still not be tired of having them around. Like,
right. I think that's what matters. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that, especially with all these people, everybody breeding nowadays, and with cannabis, the legal world just beginning. I mean, the strains are about to be everywhere, and everybody that's had strains, that's been breeding strains, all of those are going to suddenly start popping up. And I think what's may end up happening is a lot of the hype strains are going to fade away, and it's going to be, all the local well-bred strains. I mean, what's interesting is there's a lot of seed companies out there that have a bunch of F1s and a few F2s, but no F3s, no F4s, no F5s. And then there's other companies that they only have F3s, F4s, F5s, F6s, but they're just not as known. It's kind of odd, and I don't know what that means for consumers. I know that there's a lot more people that care about being popular than care about smoking good weed. So who knows, man? But so on your path all the way up here, because I mean this has definitely been a lot, and there's so much more we can talk about. But what are some resources that if somebody who's following you, or somebody that wants to get involved in breeding, or somebody who just wants to kind of see where you get your perspective from? Besides, I mean, at least for me on mine, on the Probiotic Farmer Alliance on Facebook, who do you consider a resource right now that's worth listening to?
There's a few out there. One person that I learned a lot of basic, just really basic breeding stuff from was Vader OG on YouTube.
Okay.
He's on Instagram too and stuff, but he doesn't show a lot of breeding stuff on Instagram. But
his stuff is really well put together, like his videos.
Yeah, and I mean, if even though he does things, even though we were just saying synthetics, isn't always better than organics. Like Vader still does a synthetic, style grow, flood and drain.
Right.
But I didn't judge him on that. I just looked at it as look at this guy. He's he's rifling through all these different strains, going through all these different grows. He's putting in all this work, and he's keeping it clean. He's keeping it easy. I just seen that he was his stuff just seemed better. It looked always consistently nicer, and he was constantly going through different runs compared, multiple runs compared to where other people, it was man, he's still growing that whatever. I'm holy shit, it seems like he's been growing that for 6 months now.
So you actually looked at him, I mean, and you kind of picked and choose what to pull from him, not necessarily not the synthetics, but I
idolize him.
Right.
I have to do it exactly like he did it, but I learned just a lot of basic, I learned how to kind of control some types of pollen, dealing with tense and your negative pressure or whatever, however you do it.
Right.
I learned a lot that different stuff from him. But then really I've learned a lot. It's crazy. I learned a lot about breeding just through life experiences. This whole trip, learning how to grow and breed and do everything. I've learned and seen how your actions play a huge role on the outcome of whatever it is you're working towards. So
life.
Putting in all that, it taught me you got to be healthy. You have to there's certain foods you should and shouldn't eat, and you need there's a certain things that you line up, and it just helps everything. It just it makes a healthy ecosystem. So
you were saying that you use your own life, and you just mentioned foods really quickly. So do you use, I mean, now that you're growing and cultivating the way that you do, and you're breeding the way that you do, and you're looking at your own life and whatnot, has your diet changed since your cultivation method has changed?
Oh yeah, drastically.
Why is that? I mean, because I feel like that's your resource.
No, yeah, I finally came conscious of what you put in is what you get out, just like your efforts. And so if you're if you're eating pizza and cheeseburgers and like fries and milkshakes and dairy,
God, it sounds so good.
like, oh, it sounds great, and it is good. Like, don't get me wrong, but like all that shit is shit. It's fake fucking food. It's not gonna get you jack shit nowhere. Like, you have to, like, for me, I had to step it up. Like, I knew I couldn't stay here and keep doing what I was doing the way I was doing it. Like, I had to change the character who I was and become the person who I wanted to. And eating shitty food was one of the number one things that was hindering me from becoming way the fuck better. Like, if you're dealing with anxiety and you're smoking, like, you're sitting around smoking weed and eating all these munchies, well, half of your anxiety is coming from those fucking munchies.
Dude, I just saw something on Facebook the other day saying how there's links from anxiety and not just magnesium, but also vitamin B and iron deficiencies as well. And that was, you know, one of the reasons where, like, when I stopped taking my vitamins, you know, and all of a sudden my diet changed, you know, just because of life and whatnot, I started having all these anxiety issues. And now that I started taking vitamins again, like, my anxiety has completely, I mean, it's almost gone. But it's weird when you start looking at, you know, your diet and you start almost comparing, like, how certain deficiencies cause this and how certain toxicities cause this, and they lock this out, and how this can show as this, but in reality it's this. I mean, that's, so your life is a resource that almost updates itself, and it's really, like, up to you to
decipher that information.
Wow.
And yeah, it's
damn.
Like, yeah.
So you can always keep learning then, no matter what.
Yeah.
That's fucking good, man.
Well, yeah, diet is huge, and
damn. Well, is there anything else you want to add, man? I mean, you know, I mean, besides all of that, any tips for any breeders? Anything you want to say to anybody in particular? Any shout out in particular?
Yeah, just if you're just trying to get into breeding, and, like, obviously you don't have to take it as seriously as I do. You don't have to put your life on the line like I do for it. You can easily just breed in your leisure time, but, like, you should understand, if you're doing it that way, take your fucking time, like, because it takes time. Like, I am trying to not rush things, but I'm trying to pack as much experience into my life, into my opportunity. That's the way I look at it, is an opportunity. I can't waste a second. You know, that's how I look at it. And so you just gotta understand that breeding takes time. Start small. Start with one plant. Start with your favorite plant, not somebody else's, and then go through a bunch of seeds that is another one of your favorite. Find a male that's attractive to you, to your eye. Don't let ego judge, like, don't let the name of the strain judge you or anything or nothing. Just pick what you like, cross it, keep it simple, and then just test those out and just keep moving forward, and then if you do that for 5 years and you do it a couple of times a year, like, before you know it, you're gonna have a box full of seeds and be like, oh, okay. And then you're just going to get more and more inspired, especially when you find good stuff, because it's going to take you 3 or 4 or 5 years to find some really solid, like, blow you away type strains.
That's dedication.
Yeah.
Well, with that, man, thank you for you know, taking time out of your day to do this. I mean, it's not just for me, obviously. It's for everybody listening and trying to provide everybody with all the information and help. And you know, if you guys want to follow him, it's at Golden Hill Grower on Instagram. GH Genetics is the seed producer. And with that, thank you for listening to How to Start a Cannabis Farm podcast.